to say that at what point will you agree? And with a tremendous amount of diplomacy, with a great amount of statesmanship, they came at the end, as you said, of phase one. If you talk of India being complex, you can take the whole of India and compress it. India is 140, crore people. You condense that into less than 100 million people, and that's Iran for you. So round one was very clearly won by Iran. They've stood off a combined power of US and Israel. They've defeated the larger political strategic aims. They've countered them militarily. They held their ground, and all of it is absolutely as per the Iranian psyche and strategic culture. While you may have Iran blocking the Strait of Hormuz and their proxy, the Houthis, blocking the Bab al Mandeb, we already have been through this. The world has survived 6 months of this.
Hello, viewers and listeners. I'm Srikant Kesnur, and this is Maritime Conversations. In the last episode, we had extensive discussion with Vice Admiral SJ Singh, DGUSI, wherein we covered a range of issues pertaining to the West Asia crisis, the ongoing state of conflict there, Iran's strategic culture, and much more. In part two of our interaction with the Admiral, we will be looking at his tenure as the FOC West, heading the Navy's largest operational command, the Western Naval Command. In particular, Operation Sankalp and Operation Sindoor happened under his watch and his stewardship. Let's have a look at what he has to say in the episode that follows. Now, your final assignment was as the CNC Western Naval Command, and there you saw some very exciting times too. You saw Operation Sankalp, where you put up, a fantastic performance where the Indian Navy went forth where others were hesitating to come in, and whether it was rescuing people who were stuck in disaster situation, putting out fires, or even the daring sort of uh, uh, interdiction of MV Ruin, which has now become a copybook sort of episode. That happened in one half, or the first sort of part. I think the Raksha Mantri said, "Aapne to karishma kiya hai." And then the second part towards the end, we saw Operation Sindoor, and these are going to be two separate questions because I want you to weigh in on both. But sort of foreground that your interesting tenure saw both these, where the Navy was aggressively deployed and almost sort of went into action. So first, weigh in on Operation Sankal. What happened? How did you see it? Including, like you said, the operational commander doesn't have the luxury that historian has. So how did you see the situation bearing out at that time? And since the 44, I think Mumbai's court has sentenced 44 pirates from different ships captured to life imprisonment, and that's a first in Indian legal history. So kudos to you for that. So when an Operation Sankalp and that part of the first part of your tenure there, and then subsequently we'll talk about Sindhu.
Shrikant, as you're well aware that the first round of piracy, and you watched it very closely, you were posted there at that time as DA in Nairobi. The
Yes.
first time when piracy in the Gulf of Aden and off the Somali Basin climbed up, the world's navies were reactive and not very fast off the block. The Indian Navy itself was given clearance to operate only by about October 2008.
Yes.
By the time we went in, piracy was raging. It had caught a momentum. And while now all the navies started concentrating inside the Gulf of Aden, it spread into the Somali Basin, then into Central Arabian Sea, and finally by 2010, early 2011, it had hit the limits of our exclusive economic zone.
yeah, come to close to our.
It had disrupted the shipping traffic and lanes. The World Bank estimated something like $18 billion a year lost to global economy because of piracy. Now, like any fire, you know, if you fight the fire quick and fast, remains a minor fire. If you don't counter it quick and fast, once it becomes a major fire, there's very little that you can do. Then your resources that you have to spend at it, the effort that you put in, the time that it takes, the cost, all of it rises tremendously. Now, that is one sharp takeaway from the way piracy evolved. You're aware of the sharp actions of the Indian Navy. We are the ones who captured 120 pirates. We filed about 45 piracy attacks. Most of them, if I recollect, 38 out of 45 were actually in the Arabian Sea through
Yes,
that
yes,
period of 2008, 9, 10, and 11. That is what forced the piracy and the high risk area to push back, which had reached Indian EEZ, back into the Gulf of Aden, and then we kept it that way. Now, post the attacks from Gaza on October 7, 23, and the Israeli military response to those terrorist acts, we suddenly found a maritime dimension coming in by November. In November, you suddenly found the first signs of the Houthis talking about carrying out an attack. Now, Houthis were coming out in support of the Hamas. Both are supported by the IRGC and in the Iranian regime. And then Hezbollah was getting involved much later. So the maritime dimensions started with Houthi threats, attacks, drones, and missiles. And next, no coincidence, you suddenly find the first ring of piracy coming up by now. When we look back at it, actually it happened by end of November with a fishing vessel that was taken capture and then used by the pirates. But the first that the world saw of it actually was in middle of December. And that's ironically was MV Ruin, which is somewhere about 14th or 16th of December. And it was a naval ship
yes,
that responded, tracked them, and finally managed to evacuate one senior engineer who had been shot and take him to safety across to Salalah. Now, that demanded the way the piracy, the events, the way they were coming. I was there in naval headquarters when we saw the trends. It was fairly clear that this is waiting to blow up. So it's in end December that the Chief of Naval Staff approved the launch of Op Sankalp 2, which was meant initially as a 3-month operation, because that is the time that we took will be the most robust as a dedicated and full force to make sure that the piracy doesn't grow and we keep the maritime security threats under control. So when I joined, I was already the Vice Chief of Naval Staff and privy to the planning. Some of those issues were overseen and drafted by me as to how we need to work out a plan. And the minute I moved in, we executed the plan. We diverted the entire fleet to keep a close watch, maintain presence, respond immediately to any incident that is occurring. And that's how we were able to nip those piracy in the bud. That's where we practiced, a drop with the Air Force. Actually, we practiced a drop in February of 2024 of about 600 miles off out at sea with the Air Force. We practiced the drop of Marcos out at sea, recovering and then boarding. We did contingency planning for various scenarios. As I said, we deployed the entire fleet. We changed our pattern of operations. One stage, we had more than a dozen ships that were deployed all over. And we're responding and building up MDA. And they were doing it all on our own because the rest of the world and the Western navies either didn't have the mandate or they were diverted or they were focused on other issues. So we are the ones in the Indian Navy that were deployed. And that is what led to our being able to assess, build up the maritime domain awareness. We found patterns of which types of vessels, which nationalities of vessels, what type of communications, who was behind it, and able to start forecasting that there's going to be one big one that may come up. And that big one happened when MV Ruin sailed out a second time. The rest, these are well documented. The then CNS has already held public conferences on it. We've had separate discussions. And if we start getting into the operational parameters, the tactical sense, various issues, Srikant, we probably require a second long podcast. And so I won't go into those details, but suffice to say that the first 3-4 months of 2024 were the main
yes,
ones where we were able to arrest,
yes,
reverse, and
yes,
contain the piracy. And then
yes,
we maintained it with a reduced posture all through for the next 1 year by keeping an eye on any resurgence that may occur. And we basically sort of nipped the major pirate experts in the MV Ruin incident when they decided to try and take on the Indian Navy and opened fire, and that the rest, like I said, it's documented. It's there in the Naval War College article. It's public news. I won't get into those details. Maybe we keep it for another day.
No, yes, of course. I'm so glad you brought this out, because you made an important point that the rest of the navies either sort of didn't seem to have the mandate or they stayed away, and I would think it was more the latter. But it was only the Indian Navy that was present there, and this came to me actually just a few days back in a phone call from a scholar who follows piracy based in Nairobi. And he in fact wrote a book on the first sort of uh, chapter or the initial episodes from 2008 to 12. And he was asking me that, look, he wanted to write a book saying that how the globe, now against this renewed threat by the Houthis and Iranians, and sort of certain renewal or spiking of piracy, he was trying to suggest that the Indian Navy's template of 23-24 can actually be used to bring down piracy. So I said that that's a great certificate to what you did. And why I want to emphasize this to our viewers is these things get sometimes obscured in historical narratives, but they remain, I think, one of the best chapters of Indian Navy's operations. Now, coming to Operation Sindoor, Admiral, you were there, right there in the driver's seat. The Western Naval Command, the sword arm of the Navy, was the main naval agent of this operation. So tell us a bit more in terms of the operational tactical issues and how you saw higher defense coordination. And of course, I want to remind our viewers and listeners that you are awarded the SYSM Sarvottam Yudh Seva Medal for your service during this operation, becoming in the process the first naval officer to be awarded. So tell us about Operation Sindoor and how you saw it, and how you felt, and any feelings about whether you should have actually gone into action, though that's probably an unfair question to you.
Well, thank you, Shrikant. I think I've already been on the air on this one, close to the first anniversary of Sindoor, and
Yes.
some of those are all out on the public domain. So I won't repeat some of those, other than to say that when these dastardly attacks took place on the 22nd, the terrorist attacks, it was fairly clear that Indian response was going to be major. I mean, you don't have to have been an operational commander to have known that. Uh,
Yes.
Throughout, we responded in 2016, we responded in 2019. Each time we responded a little stronger to send a message across. And this is something we had war game, we had planned. It was then in a contingency planning that if such a scenario occurs, what would be the role? And in my view, I had just taken over the fleet, as you'll recollect, after the Balakot issue, and I remember telling my COs that next time around is going to be the Navy turn, and I would tell the men, I said, "Agli bar Nausena ka var," and that we would be going into action, because as you go through the escalatory ladder, if the enemy continues to support terrorists as state policy and keeps honoring them as if they are state heroes, then it's only a question of time. It's when and not if that you have another round. And obviously, you'll try and send a stronger message than the last time, since the message didn't seem to be getting heard. So there was no doubt that this is going to be done. What needed to be done was well rehearsed, well planned from our side. It's not that happens that this sort of an event hadn't happened before. We've had two rounds earlier. So the first step obviously was we had to go up immediately in high readiness. That night itself, the entire Western Naval Command, the entire West Coast, including the Coast Guard, we informed them, we went up to red alert straight away. That night itself, on 22nd night. And at that time, my estimate was we need a maximum of 7 days to be ready for full spectrum defense. And thereafter, with every passing day, for full spectrum offense within 14 days maximum. And less than that time, both the things were achieved. Within the first 3 to 4 days, we are at full readiness for full spectrum defense, and we are fully deployed by the 8th day. having fully armed and ready. I won't get into the operational matters, you'll appreciate
Yeah.
that, but
Yes,
fully
sir.
deployed and ready, ready for full spectrum operations as required. Obviously, there was a very clear political strategy on top, which was sending a message and then pausing, giving a chance to the other side to settle down. If they want to declare themselves on part of the terrorists and associate with the terrorists and become belligerents akin as brothers to the terrorists and take action, then there would be a riposte, measured response in parlance. And that ratcheting would keep going up till he was ready to call it off because we are ready to go all the way. And that's what the deployment was all about. And it played out to that side. I've said this before. The Pakistani side took their best shot. All that happened was they fractured their own hand. And they were lying with their hands. Yeah. I mean, we took it on the chin.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. I mean, that's the maximum shot that they could take. They only fractured their own hand. And their hands were hanging limply by their side. And we could have gone in and done a lot more. But it's always essential first principle of war selection and maintenance of aim.
Yes.
We adhere to that. The other side, on the morning of the 10th, uh, if they'd called a few hours later, is the question you asked me.
Yes.
Okay. But they
The
called
coded
they
question.
called they called a few hours earlier. They put their hands up. They sued for peace. They intimated that they were aware of what was about to happen, and they called for peace and said we'd like to stop where we are. And it is a strategic call to say, okay, our aims have been met. Message has hopefully been heard this time. As a military man, you'll always have, you said it, you'll have a certain view of what you should be doing militarily. But a war is not fought on military perspective. It is fought on political strategic perspective. So the call was taken to pause at that particular stage. Uh, had their lines not worked or had they not responded at the time they did, then something else would surely have happened. Uh, let's leave that for another day, maybe 20 years later.
Yes, but it's very important to highlight that subtle point that you have made. The call was made when they became aware of something that was happening at sea, which tends to reinforce the vital role that navies play in the escalatory ladder and in ensuring deterrence or bringing back war, at least in our context, from a certain situation it's gone into. And I think this was proved in different ways, both during Kargil and Parakram. And
Yes.
like you said, Pakistan, their sort of fracture of the arm reminds me of their attack on Dwarka, where Admiral Krishnan said that but one cow was killed and they celebrate that as their navy day. So in a sense, I think you proved how the navies can play an important role in what are all sometimes seen as continental wars, and I think it's
No,
important
I
for
think
us to.
that is adequately recognized. The prime minister has come out publicly on that. The defense minister has come out on that. The chief of defense staff has come out on that. I don't think there's any doubt in any of the higher leadership's mind of what the role of the navy was. I would say the role of the navy was well appreciated, and the navy was given the leeway to remain poised and cleared to go in under certain conditions. The conditions were altered with the other side effectively suing for peace. Uh, so the aims were met. If you can win without having to fire a shot, well, that's the acme of strategy. If you're required to do some more, it would have been done. And I have no doubt that there will come a time when it'll have to be done because I doubt given the history of the other side, I don't think they're very good at reading history. And whatever little bit they can read, I don't think they understand it the same way. As you said, in 1965, they convinced themselves that they had a victory. Uh,
Yes,
in 1965, they launched a war, and when they got a riposte, they declared it as Defense Day or Defense of Pakistan Day. I mean, you
yeah,
launched the war to start with. You lost
yes,
half your country because of your military ineptness. But
yes.
somehow, out of each strategic blunder, they convinced themselves that they had a tactical victory. So, which again brings to question: as a military person, I would never say if, I will say when. So when they make the next strategic blunder and error, uh, the next stage of riposte will surely come into play. Each of these occasions, I have no doubt that the enemy is learning, and so are we. So I think
Fantastic.
that
No, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
no, I was just underlining that part of it to say that the role of the Navy, at least for the last 25 years, and why 25 years? 1971. I mean, the entire blockade of the then East Pakistan, the Bay of Bengal, the third front,
Yeah,
the full-fledged third front at sea was the maritime front, was the maritime theater that was opened up in 1971. While we
absolutely.
keep declaring, we keep declaring our Navy Day as the strike on Karachi. Personally, to my view, the greater victory, far higher victory, is the way in which the war, the maritime campaign, was waged and conducted in the Bay of Bengal. Uh, and that's where you had sent the aircraft carrier and the carrier battle group at that particular time. So same way, the lessons of what the Navy, the role of the Navy in strategic terms, in operational terms, in military terms, I don't think there's been a doubt. It is more the less informed people, not the higher leadership, not the strategists, who ever had a doubt of what the maritime theater means to India's strategy, India's prosperity, India's growth, and India's security and long-term development, and India's military posturing. It's well recognized. I mean, well recognized in the call of security and growth for all in the region. Is well recognized is well recognized 30 years ago in the Look East policy,
Yes, yes, yes.
recognized in the subsequent 10 years ago Act Peace policy. So this part of it, perhaps, Srikant, being the silent service, we don't speak out enough, and no matter what we do, we're not visible. And so hence there will inevitably be, in a large country like ours, a large amount of polity that will remain unaware of what happens out at sea. And that's where I think I look towards Meluha Maritime and your efforts as being contributing to building that larger awareness.
So I'm so glad you mentioned that. I mean, you mentioned, of course, history, and you said that, uh, of people who read history and not learn enough from that. And not a question of if, but when. Admiral Nanda said that as the CNC West, he said, you have my word, if we get another opportunity, we'll make the biggest bonfire of Karachi. It seems even at that time not many people in our neighborhood had read his published piece in the Blitz. And now the if becomes when, then then we are going into certain, let's say, good markers of historical memory and remembrance. I'd also like to, make a small clarification. I've been telling this many times that it's a misnomer that the Navy Day of December 4th is only about Karachi attack. The actual senior officers conference minutes in 72 say that we will celebrate this as a Navy Day to commemorate all of Navy's activities in the war. So
Yeah,
it's not, it is a
yeah,
matter of whatever, a nice, wonderful coincidence that the
yeah,
Trident happened on 4th. So we tend to associate it with Trident, but like
yeah.
you brought out, the Navy did many more things in that war. But since you brought out the second
Including the
aspect,
sinking of Ghazi.
yes, of course, Ghazi is Operation X, so many things.
Yeah,
Uh, since you also brought out the aspect of maritime awareness and how the top leadership in the country fully seized of what the Navy did or what the Navy can do, it takes me to the last question. Your present perch as the Director General of United Services Institution, that you know some months back I joked that in a forum here, that people who are not aware of the Mahim Creek have now suddenly become conscious of the Hormuz Strait. So the question I want to ask you, and this is something we have often discussed and deliberated, maritime consciousness and awareness, given this geopolitical backdrop, given what has happened in the Gulf, the Russia, Ukraine, the supply chain, Israel, Gaza, our own Operation Sindoor, well, the government has reacted with audacity, flexibility, and all the steps. Have the rest of our commentariat, the media, the academic world, the classes who speak and debate in a place like Delhi. Meluha Maritime is headquartered in Bombay. So seeing it from your unique perch in the USI, do you think that there's kind of greater maritime awareness or awareness of maritime issues in the national capital?
Well, that's interesting, Shrikant. As you very correctly pointed out, and as I said, the national leadership was never in doubt. You please see the policies.
Of course, of
Sagar was
course.
announced in 2015. Sagar Mala.
Yes,
The real maritime strategy is Sagar Mala. India's maritime strategy is Sagar Mala. You just
yes,
see the way your port development has come up. See the way
yes,
you are looking at new exploration policy. See your connectivity. See the
yes,
change to your merchant shipping laws, your cabotage laws, the thrust given to shipbuilding, the financial support, the technical focus. So certainly the importance of the maritime sector as a whole and a clear maritime strategy is being known.
yeah,
Now, inevitably, any commentariat, any news or TV anchor debates, we look at the news for the day.
yes,
Uh, it is not looking at mostly, and Meluha Maritime, I grant you and kudos to you, is different. You're taking the long view, but out at sea, you didn't tend to take the longer view. Things take time at sea as opposed to other places. So they will always tend to look at yesterday or today and not take a longer view. So while all the strategists, the strategic analysts, you come on record, you'll see, senior military officers like General Raj Shukla for years and years. He's been emphasizing the importance of the maritime theater.
yes,
Senior
yes.
diplomats have been emphasizing the importance of the maritime theater. See, it's not just
And
the
I
Navy
believe
alone.
General Hasnain also. I think you are in the talk,
Yes,
David.
just
He
yesterday
emphasized.
itself, but he's been saying it for many years. So
Yes,
very many senior Army officers, Air Force officers, the Air Force's doctrine, which came out in 2022, was essentially very much aligned to the Navy's doctrine of 2009 and the Navy's strategy of 2015. Uh,
that's a
getting
compliment. That's a compliment to someone.
Yeah, M. Marshal Diptondra Chowdhury, he's the one who authored it at that time. So there has been a recognition of maritime as a theater. Rest, as we keep saying, is an instrument. Is the instrument a merchant ship? Is the instrument an aircraft? The instrument maritime domain awareness is the ultimate instrument a naval warship. Uh,
Yeah.
so those are instruments. So the strategists, military or political or economic, have long recognized the importance of the seas for India's security and growth, and that's across the board, sustained over the last 3 decades, I'll say, particularly more so over the last 10 years when the thrust has been given. Now, as far as think tanks are concerned, the recent commentariats are concerned, whose memory in any case is short. Yes, they have had a recognition of finally, I mean, hearing straight instead of straits. So one, so
Yes.
one, so one great achievement has been that people are actually calling it straight,
Yeah.
and understanding what is straight, uh, from the state of Hormuz and the state of Bab el Mandeb. So they're getting that. The recognition of choke points, understanding that they can be maritime choke points, the same as the valley passes. Uh,
Yes.
that the recognition of geography being between a terrestrial and maritime, that understanding certainly is coming in. The recognition that events of globalization, that something that is happening in Venezuela is affecting you. The increase in production in the United States is easing your pain at the same time as you're struggling with certain elements of the United States administration for exactly the same reason. So
Yes.
the understanding of globalization through the maritime view, that understanding has certainly increased a little bit. Uh, how long it lasts, uh, I won't comment, but it's a step in the right direction. That there is a greater, as you said, I will not call it maritime consciousness, but as you very correctly said, greater awareness of maritime issues.
Fantastic. Optimistic view at the end of it. Wonderful, very, very wonderful having you with us, Edward SJ Singh, and to do. pun on the straight. You've always been shooting straight. It's great to have you articulate on a range of issues. I think this will be a delightful conversation. Thank you so much for taking
Thank
so
you.
much time off, and as
My
always, love the conversation.
my pleasure, Shrikant. Thank you so much.